I just read a book dedicated to stealing. Stealing is bad, prison bad, biblically bad, but you will find creatives of all types encouraging theft. The author, Austin Kleon, is talking about a specific type of stealing. You might call it stealing inspiration. He calls it stealing like an artist. What they're all really talking about is creativity, and they're highlighting that creativity comes from your inspirations. I'll share tips from his book and examples from my life, including this pendulum. How I was inspired to create this pendulum art. How to properly steal from many to create. The power that analog still brings in a digital age. And the joy of sharing what you steal. Stay to the final tip to find out how to make creativity a reality in your life. This book is chock full of great ideas. I'll share just 6 of the many tips inside this book. Let's get into it. If we're free from the burden of trying to be completely original, we can stop trying to make something out of nothing, and we can embrace influence instead of running away from it. I want to share a quick example of copying something and then playing with it until you make it your own. I didn't set out to create anything original at all. It was 11:30 at night and I stumbled across this KiwiCo ad on YouTube. I got so excited that despite the late hour, I ran downstairs and decided to try to make one. It wasn't very good. I did a little research and found this guy's channel and tried to copy him, but I couldn't because he had a 3D printer and I didn't have one. I'm making a point here because often in our attempts to copy someone, we will fail, but that also helps us end up finding our own style and our own creativity. So I ended up making my pendulum with some differences from my original muses, but I wanted to go further. And I thought, what could be cooler than a 2-bar pendulum? Answer, a 4-bar pendulum. Here's my 4-bar pendulum. Pretty cool, right? But in the end, it wasn't as good because it had a lot of friction and it would drag along the wall and the spin would decay pretty quickly. To address that, I made this beast, which is pretty heavy. You can't see this maybe, but it is a solid steel bar. Trust me, you do not want to get hit with this when it is spinning. The sucker spins forever on the wall. But I started to realize that it looked awesome in person, but you couldn't really see that coming through on the video. So I started messing with different camera settings. And I found that not only could I end up showing on the video what it looked like in person, but I could go even further. And with that additional exposure, ended up creating some really cool art. In addition to these pendulums, I made another pendulum, a specialized pendulum called a Rotz pendulum. It has a fixed bar over here and a loose bar here. This has some really cool motions from this pendulum, and I was able to make some unique art with this pendulum as well. All of this was a ton of fun and done just for the sheer joy of it and for learning about chaotic motion. But there's a point that I'm trying to bring up here. I never would have just created this out of whole cloth. I did it by following a pattern. Find something I like, try to copy it, and then deliberately alter it to make it something your own, something fun. That process was so fulfilling and I highly recommend it. That pattern can be done again and again and again. Tip 2. When we're talking about copying here, we're not talking about plagiarism. Plagiarism is when you take somebody else's work and try to pass it off as your own. One of the quotes that I heard when I was growing up and that's found in this book is, if you copy from one author, that's plagiarism. If you copy from many authors, that's research. Make sure you cite all your sources. What to copy is a little bit trickier. You don't want to steal their style. You want to steal the thinking behind their style. You don't want to look like your heroes. You want to see like your heroes. The key is, how are they doing it? Copy those aspects that you love about what they're doing. That's what you want to take into your own. That's how you steal like an artist. Let's take a look at a simple example using AI art. This is Leonardo.ai. Let's scroll down until we find something interesting. This Tinkerbell at the Met, that's a funny prompt. I like that. So I've changed nothing but used their prompt. Those look not as good as the original one. Now let's combine it with an actual Met Gala dress. I saw there's one from Blake Lively. That looks cool. So let's upload that and say, be 30% inspired and combine that with the prompt. And you can see what it's doing. You can play with that. You can hit generate a few times. This looks interesting. I think I like that one on the left. Let's try it again. Oh, this looks cool. I'm liking this glow wave effect. Let's take the glow wave effect. I just hit generate. So this one's not being inspired by an underlying image. It's just taking that prompt. Let's go ahead and modify that prompt. Let's make it a teenage boy with a glowing skateboard, because why not? Hey, that's cool. All right, let's take that idea and replace it with Tinkerbell at the Met, but use this glow wave approach. And I think that looks awesome. Just a quick example of combining different influences choices to come up with something unique. Tip 3, all fiction to some extent is fan fiction. Fan fiction is where you grab somebody's characters or the world in which they have these characters and start creating your own characters. You could create a sequel to one of the Star Wars films. In his book, he talks about creating his own sequel to Jurassic Park. This is obviously very clearly fan fiction and couldn't really sell anywhere or be your own. But if you take the idea of these and start combining them with multiple different sources of thought, change the names, change the characters, make changes to the world, but still draw the best elements that you like from each one of those styles. At that point, you're creating. That's your work, but it's still fan fiction. It's just completely disguised fan fiction, but you've made something new and interesting to show someone else. My son and I played around with this the other night. We told ChatGPT to tell us the story of the Three Little Pigs in the style of Stephen King. We went on to create several more versions of different stories with different elements, and by the end of the night, we were creating some of our own stories and had some really good ideas flowing. A lot of fun. Highly recommend it. Don't run away from fan fiction. Embrace it, have fun with it, and then mold that and morph it until it becomes something your own. Tip number 4, get analog. There's something about getting out of the digital world when it comes to creation. One of my favorite ways to work is to get white paper and push it around, draw on it, iterate, move it around. There's something nimble and quick and agile and something that really helps me to capture my thoughts faster using this. Get some pens, get some papers, get sticky notes, step away from the computer while you're working on that creation can make great results. A great example of this is CAD, otherwise known as computer-aided drafting. Obviously, that's spending a lot of time in the digital world. A friend told me they used cardboard-aided design, and I like that. So still CAD, but cardboard-aided design. What do I mean by that? Sometimes rather than getting in a digital world and mocking something up, grab some cardboard and start building. So I've done that several times. It just ends up having great results. Here's a quick example. This is basically just sticks, tape, and paper, and yet it was invaluable in helping me to quickly explore the design I had in my head for the space. And it was this U shape you can see, but ultimately once it was up, it felt too constraining. I didn't really like how it felt in the space. So I changed it to an L shape. I changed the dimensions. Now you can put a couple of chairs against that back desk. And in fact, my wife has her computer there now as I'm working as well. And so I ended up liking this design, but I was able to easily find that by doing a quick mock-up. This next tip is one of my favorites. About 6 or 7 years ago, my friend and I came up with a goal to continue learning ourselves and making sure we were sharing what we learned with our family. So we set up something called a junta based on juntos developed by Benjamin Franklin. Essentially, every month we follow this formula of wondering at something, and then we share that wonder with others. We've explored all sorts of things. Here's a couple of quick examples. We did trebuchets. We did welding.
You see how that comes out? That's what we're going to do with the mask down.
We exploded watermelons with just the pressure from rubber bands, and of course, a potato gun. These were just a few of the many, many topics we explored every month for the last 6 or 7 years. Congratulations, you made it to the final tip. This one is really, really important. None of the other tips matter if you can't do this. Stay in the flow. Austin really emphasizes the importance of staying creative, staying working on these projects, and I know exactly what he means. A project that I've been working on, it's a really awesome project. I love it, but it is a little complicated. And so every time I set it down for a vacation or a surge in work, it takes me a long time to get back to it. And Austin says, hey, you dread it because you know it's gonna suck for a while you try to get back into it before you can start flowing again. So when I saw that, I went, you know what? You're absolutely right. That's what I need to do, is stay in the flow. He highly recommends making a calendar, putting an X on it every day that you meet your goal. And he says, don't break the chain. A great example of this is I once decided to cook every recipe in a Betty Crocker cookbook. Been working on the goal for close to 18 years. Towards the end, it started getting pretty difficult. Some of the recipes weren't as tasty, and it was really hard to run down some of the ingredients. I decided to not break the chain, to work on this every day. I was listening to Atomic Habits at the time, and he said, make sure to do at least 2 minutes every day. So that's what I started doing. Some days, that's all I could do was work on it for 2 minutes, but I kept the flow. That is one of the reasons I was able to complete all 561 recipes in the cookbook. Don't break the chain, don't break the flow. If you enjoyed my views on this book, you may enjoy the views I have on all of my reads in 2023 in this video right here.